Heart to Heart with Abba Gabba. Heart to Heart with Abba Gabba. Hello and welcome to Heart with Abba Gabba, a podcast in honor of celebrating families and everything about children, beginning with us. Confidently, this will inspire and encourage us to listen, defend, and advocate for our infants, toddlers, preschoolers, school age children, teenagers, and all children from across the board to help us see the world from their perspectives and offer support throughout their stages of development. Celebrate! Heart to Heart with Abagaba is sponsored by Stop Smart, your one-stop destination for staffing and non-medical concierge services for adults, teens, and children. For more information, I encourage you to visit www.staff-smart.org and by phone 480-875-6871. You are listening to Heart with Abagaba, a podcast in honor of celebrating families and everything about children, beginning with us. I'm your host, Abby Dominguez, a former nanny, early childhood educator, wife, and mother of twins. Today, I am so delighted to bring you a heart to heart with Oscar Vasquez. He helps families grow, accumulate, and protect their assets. Oscar, you are my first guest for 2025. Yay!
Yay! Well, thank you, Abigail. I'm just so excited to be here. I'm excited to bring tons of value to your audience, and hopefully, I would just recommend take some notes because we're going to give you lots of great information that can be able to more than today's. We're going to be talking about protecting what we love most, which is our family and our assets, which is our loved ones and our assets, right?
Wonderful. So, Oscar, could you please tell our listeners where we are chatting from and share a short bio with us?
Yes. So I'm sharing this information from Southern California, the Los Angeles area, the city of angels, and give you a short bio. I've been in the real estate space for over 28 years. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I own several businesses. Um, and one of the businesses that we are starting to get off the ground is estate planning because we have noticed that there is a large awareness that needs to happen to homeowners across America that they do not realize the jeopardy and the ramifications of not having an estate plan in place. So, today we're going to talk about how to protect your home and your loved ones from the government deciding on what happens to your stuff when you're no longer here.
Thank you for the bio. That leads straight into my first question for you. I want to ask you, why is estate planning so important for homeowners and what are the risks of not having a plan in place?
Okay, so that's a great question. It's a great place to start. But what I want to do is I want to start off with the very basic understanding and try to break it down. Not only estate planning, but I want you to understand what it is. And estate planning is a living trust document that is a legal contract between you, your the grantor, and your beneficiaries, which are usually your kids. And the contract is between you and your kids to know what's going to happen with your things when you die. And the government helps you enforce that by having the legal language on your contract. So now that we know that a living trust, what a living trust is, it's a legal document between you and your kids on what you want to have happen with your soul, and more importantly, your assets.
Mhm.
So now that we know what that is, I want to tell you that the biggest thing, there's two things that a living trust does that protects your your family and your assets. So first of all, I want to talk about the most important thing. which is your children.
Mm-hmm.
If you are a parent and you don't have a living trust and something were to happen to you, with your living trust, you have what's called a guardianship document that provides who's going to be the guardian of your children temporarily and permanently when you're no longer here. God forbid something happens and the kids have to go. If there's no local relative, if there's no local family member that is close by, those kids are going to go to social services. And I call that it's equivalent. Social services is equivalent of being in jail. So I've never been, but when people when I always ask somebody how was jail, they said it was the worst thing ever. Can you imagine for a child? So that's the first thing. So a living trust can prevent that from happening because you have a guardianship agreement in your living trust to protect your children. That's the first thing. The second thing is that it prevents you from going to probate court. And what does that mean? What is probate court? Probate court is where the government, our court system is the government, decides what happens to your kids, what happens to your home, what happens to your savings accounts, what happens to your car. The government decide who ends up with that. And then on top of that, they charge you for it. So that is called probate. When they charge you for going to court and deciding what happens, the government says we want to protect our citizens from having any kind of issue with any in making sure that their belongings go to the rightful owner. However, we're going to charge you anywhere from 6 to 8%. In California, the average home is 700,000. So it could be that the average probate and attorney fees are about $42,000. However, if you don't have a home, but you have a retiree or a retirement account, the government also appoints that has to also, they seize those assets and then make that happen. So, one, what's the worst thing that could happen to you or not to you because you'll be past, you already have the afterlife. However, you will have your family or your heirs or your beneficiaries or your kids will have to go to court. And here's what that conversation looks like. An attorney comes in and says, no worries, I can help you. It's $50,000. I will help you get through the probate courts, make sure you get all the belongings. However, you don't have to pay me any money until you have to sell the house. What does that mean? That means that the house has to be sold to pay the attorney. So to prevent the house from getting lost or stolen or keeping it, if you have a living trust in place, the transfer happens seamlessly with no additional cost. That protects your loved ones. And two, it protects your assets, the hard earned money that you've had that you built over the lifetime.
Right.
So, in a nutshell, that's pretty much like the good, the ugly, and the bad of not having one. So that's. I hope that was a good explanation there.
It was. So I wanted to ask you, what is the typical cost of setting up a living trust, and how does it compare to the cost of a probate?
Okay. Well, the cost of a living trust, the average cost for a living trust, and nationwide, the average cost is $3,000 to $10,000. 3,000 to 10,000 nationwide. In California, it's 5,000 to 15,000. But nationwide, we have a lot of different errors in our system. So we have that. So it'll cost you um, on average about 3,500. If you use we use it, if you use our services and our attorney, and you use the heart to heart coupon code at estate.prep, estate.prep, instead of paying $2,400 for a comprehensive trust, you will only pay $1,400 for a comprehensive living trust, and we walk you through it in its entirety. So that gives you if you use the coupon code at estate.prep, heart to heart, coupon code heart to heart, it'll save you $1,000 to have an estate plan in place. However, it's a fraction of the cost if you use an attorney. And why is that? Because it's a legal document that has legal wording. Now, this software was drafted by attorneys for attorneys, and a lot of attorneys use our software to draft living trusts. So what we did is, instead of us just selling software to attorney base, we ended up bringing it to the public in order to save the public money, because it's awareness. Only 68% of people do not have a living trust and they're a homeowner. That is, I mean, that is like almost more than half of America does not have one, and that is something that should be taken advantage of.
That's really deep. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I wanted to ask you, what's the difference between a will and a living trust, and which one is better for most people?
Okay, the difference, well, I'm going to tell you, the difference between a will and a living trust is so big, because the a will, and I'm going to try to break it down. The difference between a will and a living trust is as simple as a will. A will is an instructions to the court, because you still have to go to probate, of what you want to have happen with your things. And then the court decides. In other words, you still have to go to probate. If you have a will, you still have to go to probate. If you have a living trust, it prevents you from going to court, which means it saves you on probate fees. It saves you from headaches and turmoils. Like if you have more than two siblings, there's three of you, everybody's going to say, mom wanted this, dad wanted that, dad wanted this, mom wanted that. However, with a living trust, it's a more detailed instruction of what you want to have happen. A will only has, this is what I wish to have happen, and it tells the court what you would like to have happen, but there is no witnesses required. There's no legal verbiage on there. And I basically call it, I love you, I give you everything that I have. I love you will, so to speak. A living trust, however, can document and say, hey, if I pass, if the house has to be sold, I want the money to go into a trust, stay in the trust. I want it to accumulate interest so my kids or my children can go to college when they grow up, and or when they get to 35, because every 18-year-old right now, or 20 and 25, and well, if they're my kids, they're still 30, and sometimes they go and come home. But but if when they have less economics about what's being responsible, you don't want them to get their inheritance and go buy $100,000 car, right? You want them to, and until that, so you can put restrictions on your living trust that they don't get access to the asset until they are mature enough. In the meantime, the money's making more money and it's accumulating, or it's paying for itself. So the biggest definition and separation from the both, in layman's terms and as simply as I can instruct it, is that a will is a wish document that you're going to tell the court what you want to have happen. A living trust says, this is what I want to have happen, and that's what will happen.
Nice. Thank you so much for explaining that so well. I grew up knowing about what a will was. Living trust, I'm still learning on that. So thank you for
Uh-huh.
shedding light. I
No problem.
appreciate it. And why do you think 68% of Americans don't have an estate plan? And how do we change that mindset?
Well, I'm on a crusade to make that happen. And the reason why I say on a crusade because one, let me the first part of your question, why they don't have it, I think is because they don't know. You don't know what you don't know, right? Like growing up, like if I know I'm at 53 years of age, I know a lot. I've lived through a lot. I've been through a lot. I've seen a lot, right? But at 18, you couldn't get me to sit down for 10 minutes because I didn't know what I didn't know. I was always in a hurry to try to go do it. So one, I think that the main one of the main reasons that people don't have a living trust is because they don't understand how important it is to protect the family and their kids. And I got to tell you, the people that take quick action on a living trust is somebody that knew somebody that went to probate and that they suffered and they had to borrow money and they had to go through this probate process because not only do you have to go to court, but then it takes anywhere from 12 to 18 months 12 to 18 months to get the money. How
Wow.
are you going to live without 18 months worth of money? I mean, today the average person has less than 2 months worth of savings in their account.
Hmm.
So I think that what they don't the reason I would say if I had to pinpoint it and out of the hundreds of customers that we've had and that we've seen that the number one reason people don't have it is because they don't understand or don't know that a living trust is an important document that you have to have if you're a homeowner or you have kids. Those are the two reasons you have to have them. So if you don't have kids and you have a home, you should have a living trust. If you don't own a home, but you have young children, you should have a living trust to protect your kids in case something were to happen, keep them from going to social services if something were to happen to you.
Wow. Thank you. What specific steps should homeowners take today to protect their homes and their assets?
Okay, so the step number one is going to be to have a get a living trust, right? That would be the step number one, and we recommend you go to estate dot prep. That's estate dot doc prep, like preparation, and use the heart to heart coupon code when you check out, and you're going to be able to save $1,000 instead of 24.97. It'll be 14.97 for a full comprehensive living trust. That would be the first of all that you could do that, or you could use the phone, you could use the number, and you could make a one-on-one consultation that will be more than happy to assist you by calling 805 909 4689. If you have questions about should I create a living trust, can I do this, can I do that, you can call that number 24 hours a day, and we have a artificial intelligence AI that can answer your questions 24 hours a day, every day, any day, all day, because it doesn't take any type of breaks or anything. Or you can actually ask them to set up an appointment and talk to me. It'll transfer you if it's within business hours and I'm available. It'll transfer you. If not, it'll book a call so I can answer any questions you may have about this living trust, depending on the state that you're in. Now, our living trust is a comprehensive legal document that's recognized by all 52 states. So our living trust is available and has been recognized by all states in America. So if you live in the United States, you own a home, or you have young children, you should get a living trust to protect them in that sense of from the government.
Nice, wonderful. So, what advice would you give to somebody who owns a home, has children, and all that, and means well, but is not willing, is kind of reluctant to have a living trust? What advice
Well,
or
I could
encouragement?
only yeah, okay. The only reason why um they're reluctant. The only reason, there's two reasons why we found that people don't take action to get a living trust is one, they don't know anybody, that any family, they don't know any family or friends, or they haven't asked anybody they know if they've gone to probate. Once they hear one or two or three stories about probate where a family member lost the property, the kids had to move out of the house had, the family home had to get moved out, and they didn't have any money until the court settled the case. Until somebody hears that, they will say it won't happen to me. And all I could say is that there's two things in America that's guaranteed to happen to everybody. One is we're all going to pay taxes, and two, we're all going to die.
Right.
And when that day comes, Uncle Sam's going to want to get his portion. So I always tell people there's already a plan in place, and that's the government's plan. And the government's plan is to decide what happens to your kids and what happens to your things when you're no longer here. A living trust is your own plan. And the government gives us that option to have our own plan to be able to decide on what we want to have happen. I want my child to have this. I want my guardian of my children to do this. I want them to go to the church. I want them to do any. You can have. I've done a comprehensive living trust with, you name it, from the person that had two kids and no money and was almost there, to people that have had millions and millions of dollars. And the comprehensive living trust, they all have the same thing. I only want to do it for my kids. Well, guess what? It's not for you. It's not for you because you'll be gone when the living trust takes an action. Now, here's one thing that many people don't realize of a living trust. A living trust is a living document. It lives forever. It outlives you. So that means that you can make changes, you can add it, you can delete it, you can add people, you can add people, you can remove people. If somebody passes, we take them off, we do a reinstatement. If you get another child, if your child grows up and they get married, one of the things that we found is that's why every 3 years, that's why our living trust is the only living trust on the market that gives you unlimited updates for life. That means that when your children, if your children are 5 years old today and they live to be 25 and they grow up and they get married and they have kids, you can adjust your living trust to say, I want my home to go to my daughter. And
Mhm.
when she passes, I want a portion of that to go to my grandkids so they can go to school. The living trust has that much in there. But if something happens to my daughter, I want the money to be held in the trust, and I want it to go to my grandkids until they're old enough to receive the money, not to my son. I call that there's a funny story about I called it the tattoo son-in-law that didn't get along with his in-laws, but his wife and one of our clients, he had they went into they went on vacation. Mother and daughter went on vacation in Puerto Vallarta in Mexico, and they passed. They got into an accident, and they
Oh no.
passed. The the dad came, said, "Hey, I need to update my living trust. Can I come in and see you in 2 weeks?" I
Mhm.
said, "Fine. Whenever you're here, you get unlimited living. You get unlimited updates. You can log on." But he said, "I want you to do it for me." His language barrier was not in fluent.
Yeah.
And so what happened is he wanted to update the living trust to make sure that if something happens to him, all of his assets go to his daughter's portion of the assets, because it was a brother and sister. He had two kids, and he didn't want the assets to go to the son-in-law. He
Uh-huh.
wanted them to be held in the trust for the and he called him his tattoo. He said, my winter son-in-law, right? But I call the story the tattoo son-in-law. But he wanted the money to go to their grandkids once they grew up, but he wanted to be held in the trust. Well, lo and behold, he didn't make it the 2 weeks and he passed.
Oh.
and the son-in-law ended up inheriting his daughter's portion of the funds. Well, he's either, hopefully he, I don't know what ended up happening. I didn't have a relationship with the tattooed son-in-law, but we only wish that he kept some of the money for the kids to be able, because it was a very, very nice nest egg. He had left two homes and a nice retirement account that the guy saved up for many, many years. He was an engineer in a company called Northrop, which is a company, it's an aerospace company out here. So I share that with you because if there's any piece of advice that we can give you is to take action, go to estate.prep and use the coupon code heart to heart to save some money and prepare it to protect your family, your assets, and the things you love most. And don't let the government decide on what happens to your things. You decide.
Wow. Wow, that's informative. Sounds like a peace of mind for us when we're gone.
Yeah, well, you'll have peace of mind. When after we do a ceremony, I always ask. A lot of customers, they're not in too much into talking about their estate planning because that's a very, very private document. But most customers, after they do their signing ceremony, they always say thank you. And I feel like I got an 800-pound gorilla. At least I did my part for the kids. Now what happens and what the kids decide when they grow up, that's on them, right? Um, but there's not much that I can tell you other than that 95% of the people feel that they got a big relief of being able to accomplish that.
Yes, I can only sense that. I can only feel that already. I know that it happened in my family years ago, and I really wish that there was something in place to protect.
Wow. So your family went through. So you have a story, right? Of
I
that.
do. I do.
Wow.
I do.
What part of the country? What part of the country did your family did you?
So I was born in Ghana. I used to live,
Oh, okay.
I was born and raised in Ghana. I live in Mesa, Arizona right now, but I'm originally from Ghana, born and raised. So,
Wow.
so yeah,
Well,
when my
that
dad,
happens worldwide, right? I got family members in Mexico that had a tremendous effect. I mean, it took them 7 years to get their property from the government because I mean, in Mexico, it's about as straight as a $3 bill. But I mean, we come from a country that's really there, and they took them 7 years to settle their estate in that country, and they didn't. They have what's called it's a in Spanish it's called the last will and testament
mm,
um, that they have, but they have to have it, and that needs to be notarized. Like here's another thing: in order there's three things that the living trust has to have in the US in order to be effective. One, it needs to be signed in front of a notary. Two, it needs to be signed in front of two witnesses. And number three,
yeah,
okay, number three, it needs to be funded. In other
okay,
words, you got to put the assets names. For example, you got to put your house under the living trust. You got to put your bank accounts under the living trust. It's got to be funded. In other words, put the ownership of those assets into the living trust. And I always tell people it's you own nothing, but you control everything. You
mhm,
can if you have a revocable trust, you can make changes, you can make updates, you can buy it, you can sell it, you can upgrade it, you can downsize it, you can do anything you want while you're still alive. It becomes irrevocable, in other words, unchangeable
mhm,
once you pass,
right.
which is breathtaking in itself. That it's something that is amazing.
It is amazing. It is amazing. I am so educated right now. Oh my goodness.
Awesome. Well, you know what? I want to just say, you know what? Thank you. I know that there, but I would always tell people just listen. If you have any questions, feel free to call me at 805-909-4689, or you can go to estate.prep and use the coupon code heart to heart, and that'll save you $1,000.
Nice. So I was just going to ask you if you had a website or social
Yeah,
media handles.
it's our same website, estate.prep, and it's
Okay.
heart to heart. And
Okay.
okay, and we do that because I'm doing an awareness campaign right now. And the awareness campaign is to let America know that if you don't do something, the government will. If you don't decide, the government will decide for you,
Yep.
right?
That's
And
true.
it's unfortunate, but you got to take action to make that happen.
Yep. I totally agree. And isn't it amazing that you're in Heart to Heart with Abagaba and you have a coupon code Heart to Heart?
Yeah, yeah, that's great. Well, though, it's a special code just for your listeners.
Oh, nice.
It's a
Okay.
special code for
Just
your
for my
listeners
listeners.
only,
Okay.
and I want to be able to track it because
Okay.
we want to be able to track that heart to heart,
Uh-huh.
where the customer came from. We want to be able to say thank you. There's a lot of thank you that we try to give it out to be able to do that and help people with that.
Wonderful. That's really nice, Oscar.
Okay. Well, fantastic. Thank you for having. If there's any other questions,
Yeah. So yeah, I have about 8 minutes and
okay.
I wanna thank you again for coming on Heart to Heart with Abagaba today. And do you have any final thoughts to share with us?
The only final thought is that it's never too late until it is.
I like
And
that.
and and if you don't take action today, tomorrow will never come. And yesterday was too late. So the best time
Yeah,
to take action is today.
right.
And you never know when it's our time. There's a saying in Mexico. It says, when it's your time, even if you get out of the way, it will still be your time. And if it's not your time and you get in the way, you still ain't going. So it doesn't matter. We're all on God's plan, right? I
Yes,
truly
we
believe.
are.
I don't mean to be religious with it, but I believe in that that it's there. So the only thought that I would say is protect your family, protect what the things that you love, and more importantly, protect the people that you love. It's worth every penny to do that. So thank you so much for having me, and I had a great time. Thank you for that.
Oh, you're very welcome. And those are really encouraging final thoughts. It's never too late. I like that. It's never too late. I want to thank you so very much again for coming to Heart with Abba Gabba and Happy New Year, day 3. Have a wonderful day and thank you again. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Heart to Heart with Abba Gabba is also sponsored by Aspire Behavioral Health. They offer monitoring, counseling, medication, and personal care services in a beautiful residential setting. I encourage you to contact them at aspirecbh@outlook.com or call 480-875-6871. Please feel free to share this podcast with your friends, families, and loved ones. And if you would like to connect with me, the best place would be on my website, abigailedominguez.com, or on social media. You can follow me on Instagram at author_Abigail_Dominguez. And we have a new YouTube channel at Heart to Heart with Abagaba. So please feel free to check us out also. And finally, I'd like to make a disclaimer that the stories and points of views we have shared on this podcast are personal and from our life and work experiences. We are not legal, medical, mental, or health advisors. Have an awesome day, and I look forward to connecting with you again on this platform. Be your light, be joyful, and as always, celebrate.